Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This video tutorial is for this awesome bag called the Buddy Sling Bag, and it's by KMGhandmade. And if you guessed it by the name, this bag was named after Buddy here, my loyal companion who's always with me when I'm sewing and likes to come into the tutorials and hang out with me. And she seems to really like to be in the KMGhandmade tutorials for some reason, maybe because they're a little bit longer so she has more time to come up and visit with me. But Kristen decided to honor Buddy and name a bag after her because we all need a buddy. So this is the Buddy Sling Bag, and let's discuss some of the features. But before we do, there was just a few important things I wanted to go over before I start showing you the features. First of all, this tutorial is filmed like a sew-along, meaning I don't speed any parts up, I don't cut any parts out. You see me sewing the bag completely. You can follow right along with me. And this is so that anybody who's new to making bags can be able to see exactly how it's constructed and not miss any parts. So, if there's any parts that you don't want to watch, you can definitely fast forward through it or speed up the speed of the video so that it goes at the pace that you want. Another thing is I don't show any measurements. I show no rulers, no cutting mats, no nothing on camera. And this is not only for the protection of the designer, but also because I often film during testing. And sometimes during testing, measurements for, say, where a snap needs to go or other measurements can change. And so this way here, by not giving any measurements, my tutorial is not affected by any changes that may be made. So you'll be able to just sew right along and not have any problems. So you will need to have your pattern either printed and open beside you, on another device beside you, or on this device that you're watching this video on so that you can follow along. Because I don't even give seam allowance, because those can even sometimes change during testing if we find that there's an issue. So now let's discuss the features of the bag. First of all, there are a couple different styles of the bag, and you'll want to read through the pattern so you can choose which style you want to make. I've chosen to do the water bottle pocket, as you'll see here. But the other style has a slip pocket on the front, which has like a little other piece that goes over top, so it kind of hides the slip pocket and you have to reach into it. Buddy's leaving, she's over this. But for the water bottle pocket, it's just nice because you have your water bottle with you and you don't have to worry about having it in your hand or carrying it. It's just right there with you on your bag. And when you're not using the water bottle pocket, you can just tighten this up as tight as it can go, tuck in the string, and there you go. You just have your little pocket on the front, and you could slip sunglasses into there, whatever you want. When you turn the bag to the back, you'll see that there's a zipper pocket here. This zipper pocket, because it's against your body, would be perfect for your phone. So when you're wearing the bag, if your phone's ringing or anything, you'll feel it because it's against your body. And it just keeps it nice and secure and safe because it's right against your body. As it's mentioned in the name, it is a sling bag, so the bag is worn as a sling. And the nice thing about this pattern is Kristen designed it so you can make it for a lefty or a righty. So the way you make it will depend on how it is worn on the body and what hand is the dominant hand for the person that's wearing it. So I made this for a person that's right-handed. Well, actually, he's ambidextrous, so it wouldn't matter. But for a right-handed person, so my sling bag will sit from my left shoulder going over to the right side of my body, so I can get into my bag from the right-hand side. So when I open it up, it's on the right-hand side. But if you're a lefty, you'll be able to put it so it goes this way and it would open up on this side so your left hand can access the bag. It's a really neat feature, cool design. I love that Kristen thought about this because it's really important. Sometimes we make bags and we forget that there are people who are left-handed, so we need to accommodate that. So now when we open up the zipper, because the bag is closed with a zipper, you can see the bag opens pretty wide. Excuse me. Then there's a zipper pocket here. So that's great for anything you don't want loose in the bottom of your bag, maybe your keys or anything else you don't want loose in the bottom of your bag. On the other side, we have card slots here. So you don't really need to bring a wallet with you because you have your card slots right here. And there are 6 of them. So you can see the card there inside. And there's 6 card slots. So you don't need to have a wallet with you because you have a built-in wallet in this bag. And then there's a pocket that goes in front, a slip pocket, which is great for your bills or receipts or anything else that you need. And that's all easily accessible when you wear the bag and you reach in, and the pocket for the card slots are right on the front. So you're wearing it. You don't have to take the bag off to reach out your card. You can be wearing the bag to take your card out, put your card back in, take your bills out, because it's on this side of the bag, on the front side of the bag. So it really makes it really very accessible. Again, another design that I think Kristen really nailed it with this bag. This bag is an awesome sew. I really enjoyed making it, and it really doesn't take that long. And I mean, you could leave off the front pocket options if you want and just do some fun embroidery on this front panel. You could leave off this back pocket and just leave it plain if you don't want. You could just make this really basic and really simple, or add all these features that Kristen has on the bag. It's your bag, make it exactly how you want. But even with all these features, it doesn't take very long, and it's an awesome sew. The other thing I will mention is it does use binding, and don't let that scare you, because it really is pretty easy, and I walk you through how to do that. I also have another tutorial, which I'll link below in the description, to show you a little bit more detail about how I do my binding, but Kristen has all the instructions in the pattern as well, and it really is very easy. And I enjoy binding because it gives like a skeleton of the bag, and it helps the bag hold its shape really nice. So I really like binding for that reason. I know back when I started, I didn't really like it very much. I had struggled with it, and then I figured out ways to make it easier, and the more I did it, the easier it got. So now I really like binding, and I just like how it gives the bag its shape. So again, this is the Buddy Sling Bag by KMGhandmade. I'm going to walk you through all the steps of making this bag. So let's get started making our bag. So the very first thing you'll want to do is read through the entire pattern. This is very important because it familiarizes you with the pattern, so you know what you're doing when you get to the construction, but also because oftentimes designers give important information regarding different interfacings you're using, maybe different materials. So you'll want to read through and make note of that, so that when you go to cut your pattern pieces, you know what you need to cut and don't cut. For example, some pattern pieces need to be cut out of all faux leather or a material that doesn't fray, while others can be cut out of quilting cotton. So depending on the materials you're using, these are things you're going to want to make note of before you start cutting out your pattern pieces. Once you've decided what you're going to be using for cutting out your materials, so I'm using a faux leather, quilting cotton, and a waterproof canvas for mine, you can go ahead and cut out all your pattern pieces. The other thing you're going to want to make note of, because this pattern does have some options, is what option you're going to be making. So either style A or style B. So one style will have a pocket, a slip pocket on the flap, or on the front, sorry, and the other style will have a water bottle pocket. For this tutorial, I am going to be doing the water bottle pocket, which requires some mesh. So just trying to find it here in my pile. It's kind of hidden. So some mesh here. So you will need to follow the instructions as you're cutting and make sure you cut out the right pieces, because you don't want to cut out more than you need for the design of the bag that you're making. Another thing you can do is go ahead and gather all your hardware and any other materials that you need. So the cording, the binding, and my zippers, they're all in here, including the hardware that I need, which I also have in here. And I just like to put it in a little baggie so that it stays together. Usually I'll clip my zippers all together, but I just put it in this bag because it's big enough. And another thing is I labeled each zipper with what they are going to be for, so that when we get to the step, I know exactly what zipper to grab. I'm not trying to look through my pile and try to find what zipper it is. Another thing I've done is I've made markings on my pattern pieces. So for example, I've marked where the centers are. So all my centers are marked. And I also label with what each pattern piece is. So for example, here's another one where I've marked the zipper pocket, and I've also marked that this is for pattern piece I. So I've done that, and I've also made other markings that I need to make, so that when I get to that step, I don't have to stop the camera and go off and make all the markings, because as I mentioned before, I don't show any pattern pieces, give no measurements, show no rulers, no nothing on camera. So I like to have those markings made before I get to them where I can, because sometimes there are markings that you can't make until the bag has been constructed. So where I can make markings, I have gone and made them already. I've also made the markings that I need for my strap, and that's another thing you'll want to make note of. What kind of strap you're making, you can use webbing for this pattern, or you can make your strap. Kristen does give a bunch of different options for the strap. I'm making mine out of material, so I'm going to show you how to do that. But you can definitely use webbing, which will also help cut back on the time that it's going to take to make this bag, because you're not needing to make a strap. I'm going to walk you through all the steps of making this bag, including the ones that I'm not doing. I'll just walk you through. So let's get started making our Buddy Sling Bag. And the first thing we need is our front pieces. So I'm just going to take them and put them to the side. Or not our front pieces, sorry, our back pieces. And our zipper for the back. And see, it's really easy to grab because I've got it labeled. I know which one it is. And our zipper tabs, which I also put in there because they're small and I tend to drop them. Even though I have them clipped together, I tend to lose them. So I'm just going to remove this tape. So the very first thing we need to do here is add our zipper tabs to the end of our zipper. And what we're going to do there is we're going to fold our zipper tab directly in half so those short edges meet. And they're going to be wrong sides together. Give it a press, open it up, and then take those short edges and press them towards that center crease. You're going to end up with a small piece, and I'll show you how it looks. Oh, Buddy's coming back, I think. You're going to end up with a small piece like this, and the folded edges are in the center here, or the raw edges, sorry. Take the tab and put it on your zipper. So put your zipper into the tab just like that, into the center fold. So there's my center, oops, there's my center fold here. I'm going to place it directly into the center, lining up those side edges. For some reason I can't do it now. Lining up those side edges so that it looks like this. Clip it in place, and then we're going to stitch this to the zipper using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And you can use some double-sided tape here if you want to help hold this in place, just so that it doesn't shift on you. I'm going to fold the second tab. Lots of loose threads. So I'm just folding my second tab. Now, you can take this to your iron and give it a really good press if you want. I'm okay with the finger pressing. I find that it's pressing it enough. I'm just slipping the end of my zipper into the tab so it hits that crease. And now I'm going to top stitch this in place, again using that seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim all your threads. One thread didn't want to cut. Trim all your threads, and then you're going to have a zipper that looks like this with the tabs on either end. Now we need to take the rear lower zipper pocket B piece and we need to place it right sides up, and then we're going to place the zipper centered right sides together with the right side of the B piece. And I'm going to line up the center mark. So I'm just folding my zipper in half. Oh, hi. Folding my zipper in half so that the short edges meet where the zipper tabs are. Excuse me. So I've just drawn my center mark. Make sure you have a center mark on your B panel as well. Now Kristen has you use some double-sided tape here. I'm not going to use double-sided tape. I'm just going to have it so that my zipper is just lined up on top of my panel here. So just like that. And then I'm going to clip it in place. And one thing to note before you start pinning and clipping and sewing is if you're making this for somebody who is a lefty, you need to have it so that the zipper pull closes to the left if you're making it for a lefty. If you're making it for someone who is a right-handed person, so a righty, you need to have it so the zipper pull closes to the right of your material. So this is right-handed, see the zipper is closing towards the right, and this is left, so the zipper pull is closing to the left. This is very important because if you don't have them oriented the right way, it's going to be difficult to get in and out of your zippers when the person is wearing them. So I'm going to make this for a right-handed person. So I'm going to clip it in place. Actually, I'm making this for my son and he is ambidextrous, so it doesn't really matter which way, but I'm going to make it right-handed so that if I ever want to wear it or his sister does, we can both be able to wear the bag and not have issues because his sister and I are both right-handed. So my zipper pull is closing to the right for a righty. And now we need to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And when you approach that zipper pull, slide it out of the way so that you can keep the zipper tape nice and straight at the top here. And you'll notice too that our zipper tabs don't go all the way to the end. That's to help keep the bulk out of the seam allowances for when we bind our bag. So it doesn't go right to the end, and that's what you want. So now we're going to fold this up down away from the zipper. So press it so that it goes away from the zipper. And we're going to top stitch through the seam allowance under the zipper here. Now you're going to notice that we're not adding a lining side. And the reason for that is it reduces layers in the final seam when the bag is completed. So when we go to bind the bag. So we're not adding a lining here. And really, no one's ever going to see it because this is going to be inside your pocket. And that's why it's kind of nice that I used the vinyl for this piece, because the vinyl is nice. It's got, you know, that backing that it has on it, but nobody's ever going to see it. So even if you're using quilting cotton, no one's ever going to see it because it's going to be inside that front pocket. So top stitch across the whole edge under the zipper. It's just nice not to have all that excess bulk. I know we're binding the bag, but you don't want to have any of that excess bulk. So Kristen has thought of everything. And I'm using vinyl for this part, but for the piece that's going to go behind it, I'm using quilting cotton. So that helps keep the bulk down there as well. Now we need to attach this top piece here so that it looks like this when it's done. So we're going to do the same thing. Line up our center marks. And another thing you can check is make sure that your side seams line up as well. So have everything lining up. So these side seams here, you want them to line up. And then we're going to top stitch this in place, or not top stitch, sorry, stitch this in place. So return your stitch length back to the length you used for stitching a bag. And I'm approaching where that zipper pull is, so I'm just going to zip it up out of the way. And then I'm going to press this panel up away from the zipper, and I'm going to top stitch the exact same way I top stitched that lower panel. From one end all the way to the other end. And again, there's no lining here, just as I was saying, it helps keep the bulk down. So again, my zipper closes to the right because I'm making this for a righty. Now we need to take the lining back panel. So remember I had mentioned that I'm using the quilting cotton for this. And we need to place this panel on top of the lining panel. Now yours may be slightly bigger. And that's okay. I'm going to line up where I have these marks here, the center marks at the top and the bottom, just to make sure everything stays lined up nicely and neatly. I want all my center marks to stay lined up. And my panel is a little bit bigger, but we're going to trim that down. But first we're going to base stitch all the way around, and I'm going to zip my pocket over. And you'll notice right now, this is where we have that space here on the sides of the zipper panels, or the zipper, so that that is kept out of the seam allowance. Very important, so that we reduce all the bulk wherever we can. And Kristen really thought of everything when she designed this bag. So I'm going to trim mine down first before I baste it. So now that mine's all clipped together, I can see where I need to trim. So I'm going to trim it first. Actually, no, I won't trim it first. I'll baste it on this side first at the bottom. And I'm just basting it together, so you can use a longer stitch length. I'm just going to baste the bottom together first so that I can trim it, just so that that doesn't shift on me. That's why I did that. And then I'm going to trim it up so that it's the same length and width. Width didn't really change though, but same length as my lining panel, just like that. And now I'm going to finish basting it all together, all the way around the entire panel. Uh-oh, just got to change my bobbin quickly. Try to use up all my bobbins, even if they're just a little bit empty. Otherwise, they never get used. Panel is shifting here, so I'm going to come up the other way. I think it shifted when there we go. There we go. The panel was shifting, I guess, when I got to here where the zipper pocket is. It sort of shifted it down, so that just prevented it from shifting. So I'm just trimming all my threads, trying to find them all and trim them. I don't know if you can hear the cats playing in the background, but it's cute because their little bells are going off. So there we have it. That is how our back panel looks. And when you zip it closed, you have a pocket. And as I mentioned, nobody sees the wrong side because, first of all, that's going to be against your body. And you're going to use your right hand to open and close the zipper so you can get in and out of it. And if you're doing this for a lefty, it's going to be the other way. So my zipper closes towards the right. Again, for a right-handed person, if you're making this for a left, you definitely want it to be closing to the left. So that's how my zipper is closing. I'm going to put that to the side for now. We're going to move on to working on our strap connector wing assembly. So we need our strap connector wings. And that is these pieces here. So they look like this. And then we need these are called our facings, and we also need our strap connectors. Now we have two different ones that we're using because we're using two different sizes of hardware, and this is to ensure that the shoulder strap up at the top here will be wider so it's more comfortable. So you need to fuse your interfacings if you haven't done that now. Once you have them fused, you'll mark a center line all the way down the entire length of these connectors, and then we're going to fold the long edges in to meet the center. So fold those long edges into the center. And then we're going to top stitch down those long edges. So I'm just going to add some clips. And we're going to top stitch down those long edges. And I'm going to do the same thing with this smaller one here. You can definitely take this to your iron and give it a press. I'm just going to do it this way. And top stitch down the long edges. Trim all your threads. There's quite a bit here. All right, so that's how they look when they're done. Now we're going to take our hardware find them. We're going to slide the hardware onto them, matching the short raw edges. So take your hardware, and there's a seam on my hardware. I like to make sure that's between the connector. So you just slide the connector on or to the hardware. Same thing with the D-ring. Slide the connector on, line up your short raw edges. It'll look like that. Then we're going to baste these short edges together. So there's one. Two. Trim your threads. Oops. Just like that. And that's how they look with your hardware attached. Just take these and put them off to the side for now. Now we need to grab one of the connector facings and place it so it is right sides together with the strap connector. So your strap connector piece is I'm just looking at the strap connector wings, sorry, piece O. So these are piece O. I interfaced them after I wrote what the letter was on them, and then I never rewrote it. So you take your wing O and place it right sides up, so the pretty side is facing up, and then you're going to take your connector P and you're going to align it so the red arrows on the templates match up on both pieces. So you want them to match up, so it's going to look like that. And I'm going to use some pins here. And it's touching the edges of the wing here too. Now, the other thing you need to do is draw a little rectangular box, and I don't know if you could see my little rectangular box there, but I've drawn a little rectangular box, and I've also marked what this box is going to be for what size of hardware. So you want to follow the instructions for drawing that little rectangle box on your facing here. And I'm just pinning this in place. So box was drawn, I've got it pinned in place where it needs to go, and now I'm going to stitch around this little box that I made, and I'm going to leave long thread tails and pull them through to the back and tie them off. I'm not going to back stitch. So to get a long thread tail, pull up your bobbin thread, start in the corner, and I'm just stitching directly on top of that box I drew. Now, in the corner here, I don't want to end up with angled stitches, especially for this pattern piece. So what I do is I leave my needle down, reduce my stitch length to as small as it can go. Mine goes to 0. So I bring it all the way to a 0, and then I take that one stitch length, so 0. I take that one stitch, then return it back to the length I was using for stitching. And this just prevents those angled stitches. It locks that stitch in that corner so that you don't end up with angled stitches. And I'm just going to do it here. Now I'm going to lift up my presser foot, pull long thread tails, and now I'm going to pull them through to the back. So I just pull on the back threads, which causes the front ones to come up. It makes a little loop in the back. So I'm able to pull them all through. You can see them here. They're all pulled through to the back. Now I'm going to put them in pairs of 2, and I'm going to tie them off. And I find it easier when they're all the same length, or similar length anyways. Tying it off. Once we have this tied, we're then going to cut a hole to be able to turn that facing through to the wrong side. So same thing you do when you make a zipper pocket. And I'm just trying to find my seam ripper here. Seems my seam ripper has disappeared. There it is. So now we need to cut through the facing and the lining. So I just start a little hole. And then I take my scissors and I'll cut the rest of the way. And when I get towards the end, I make little V's. I like to say they look like Y's more than V's. Be careful not to clip those stitches. If you do, don't panic. What you can do is go back and stitch over those stitches. So back stitch, go back over where the corner is. So usually it's in the corner. So I start away from the corner here on the top. I back stitch, I come down to the corner, down the side edge, and back down the bottom and back stitch. And I'm back stitching over the previous stitches so that it locks in the previous stitches, and then I've fixed that corner so there's no hole there. So I'm just pressing this with my fingers. I'm folding it over and pressing it with my fingers. And then I'm going to push this through to the wrong side. Just like that. And then what I'm going to do is take this to my iron, and I'm going to give it a really good press just to press that open nicely. And then I'll come back, and while I'm paused, I'm also going to sew the second one to the second connector wing, and then we will have them all done and we can continue on with adding our connectors here and everything else. So I'm going to go press this with my iron, sew this one, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. So I've pressed it, and I realize you don't really need to press them, but I just like to press it just so I get a really nice clean box. Now we need to take our hardware with the connector on it, and we need to insert it into that opening that we made, that facing opening. So you're just going to pull it into the facing opening just like that. And you want the hardware to go towards the top edge that is smaller. So see how this looks like a triangle? You want it to go and be at the top, towards the top edge. So insert your hardware just like that. And then we're going to now sew across under this hardware here. We're going to sew across that. But before we do, we'll fold this facing on the back down so that that comes down. So turn it over. I'm just trying to get this to stay nice and straight. It keeps shifting on me. There we go. Okay. So once you have that nice and straight, fold the facing at the back down to cover the back of the connector. So you want that folded down like that. So it'll look like this. Then we're going to sew through, oh, my connector moved again. Then we're going to sew through under this connector here on the box, underneath the connector, just where that facing opening is. My connector keeps moving and it's not staying straight. There we go. So again, make sure the facing is folded down in the back. And we're going to top stitch just under that hardware. And if you don't want back stitching showing here, you can leave long thread tails and pull them through to the back if you want. I just top stitched through it, or back stitched, because you're not going to really see it with this fabric that I've chosen, or sorry, that my son chose. So that's how it looks. Now you can sew a box here. Kristen says you can either sew a box here with an X through it, or you can use a rivet instead here, or 2 Chicago screws. So I'm going to use rivets, so I'm going to go off camera and install them. And I'm going to repeat that for the second one. So again, insert your hardware with your connector, fold the facing down in the back so that it covers it, just like that. And then sew directly under this hardware. So I'm going to do that. Normally I would go off camera to do the second one, but this is pretty quick. Seems like this one stayed straight for me. I guess because it's smaller hardware, and that's how that one looks. So now I'm going to go install the rivet, and on this one I'm just going to install one, but on this one I'm going to use 2 rivets. You can use Chicago screws, or if you don't have any of those, sew a box here and then you can put an X through it, and that'll really help secure that and hold that in place. So I'm going to go install my 2 rivets, and then I will be back and we will continue on. I've installed my rivets, and now we can move on. That's how it looks with the rivets installed, and you may have sewn a box with an X like I was saying, or use Chicago screws. Now we need to fold this hardware so that it is down towards the long edge. So you want it to point down. We're going to place another strap connector wing, so one of these, on top of the first wing, so right sides together, and clip it in place. Then we'll sew just the sides and the top edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So just the sides and top edge are going to be sewn. You're going to be leaving the bottom edge unsewn because we'll turn this through that bottom edge. So sew the sides and bottom edge, and if your stitch length was at a longer length because you were top stitching, change it back. Don't forget to back stitch at start and stop. And in the corners, I like to backstitch a little bit just to give some extra security for those corners. Just so that when we're poking out the corners, they poke out nicely and I don't have to worry about breaking any stitches up in those corners. Just to add some extra strength up there. Trim all your threads, and then what we're going to do is we're going to snip the corners to help reduce the bulk. So snip the corners. Careful not to clip your stitches. Oops. Now we're going to turn this right sides out. Carefully poke out your corners. So use your tool that you use for poking out corners. And I like to go down the seam too. There's one. I'll turn the other one right side out and poke out those corners. Now you can take this to your iron and give it a really good press if you want. I'm just going to use some clips to hold everything in place. And then I will top stitch all around the edges, and I will baste the bottom edge together as well. So I'm going to top stitch up the side, across the top, back down the other side, and across the bottom. And then I'm just basting across the bottom. So up one side, across the top. And I went a bit too far there. There we go. Down the other side. And now I'm going to go across the bottom. I'm going to trim all my threads. Excuse me. And if you have any threads from fraying, trim those too. There we go. And that's how they look so far. Now we need to, now if you didn't do them both at the same time like I did, you'll repeat the whole thing again for the second one and add that one rivet. I had to think of what the name was called. I lost the word. You'll add that one rivet, or again, sew that box, but I did them both at the same time just to get them done. Now we need to take that completed backing, so the one with our zipper, and we need to place the wing with the bigger hardware at the top, and we're going to line up the centers. So find your center mark, and to do that I just fold it in half, and then with my chalk I'll make a mark where that center is. So I'll do that for both connectors. I'll find the center mark. All right, so again, we need the connector with the bigger hardware, and we're going to place this at the top, and you're placing it so the hardware is going to be facing up. Your panel is facing up, so you're looking at the zipper right now, and then your wing with the connector is facing up, and we're going to line up those center marks. Your wing will stick up off the edges on the corners here, so at the curved edge. It'll stick up off it just like that, and that's right. So now we're going to sew this to the curved edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And you'll want to turn this over so that you can see where the seam, or not the seam, the edge of your material is, so that you can sew this together. Trimming all my threads. Now I'm going to trim the excess off the top here. And it'll look just like that. Now we need to do the same thing on the side for this other connector here, this other wing. However, you need to place this so that you have your wing on the same side as the side that your zipper closes on. So if you're closing your zipper to the left, this is going to be placed on the left-hand side of your panel. If your zipper is closing to the right, you're going to place this on the right-hand side of your panel. And you're placing this wing so that the hardware points up towards the center. And you're placing it at the bottom curve. And I'm trying to place it exactly how it's shown in the pattern. So at the bottom curve, just like that. Clip it in place, and again, we're going to sew from the wrong side, just as we did in the previous step, so we can see where we're stitching. We're going to trim our threads and then trim the excess material. So as you can see, I put it in the corner. It's on the corner there, so it looks like this. Trim the excess material. And now it looks like that. So the smaller hardware is at the bottom and the bigger hardware is at the top. We're going to place that to the side for now and move on. Don't forget, again, I just want to repeat one more time. If your zipper is closing to the right, you need to put this so that it is closing, so that it's on the same side as your zipper closing. So for right, you'll put it on the right side. For a left-handed person, you'll put it on the left-hand side. So just ensure that this is on the right side. If it isn't and you've made a mistake, you can easily unpick your basting stitches and go back and reattach it to the right side. Now we're going to make our zipper pocket. So continuing with the lining back assembly, we need to grab our lining panel piece A and our piece I, as well as our zipper. So zipper pocket. We're going to clip this so that they are right sides together. Now it's going to seem a little bit weird because normally we would think this would be the top and this would be the bottom. But for this, the long edge is the top. So we need to find our center points, which I already have my center points marked, and I have my center point marked on my zipper pocket. So we're going to line up those center points. Clip it in place along the top edge. And then you can pin it down here too, if you're not using a material that you can pin. You can always just use clips down at the bottom here. Now there's a measurement from the top edge down that you need to make, so you'll use that measurement to make the marks and then draw your little rectangle for your zipper pocket. So go ahead and use those measurements to draw your rectangle, and then we will then stitch around that rectangular box we drew using a slightly shorter stitch length, so just around the outside edge of that rectangle that we drew. So I'm going to use a shorter stitch length, a slightly shorter stitch length, back stitch at start and stop. And again, I don't want angled stitches, so I've reduced my stitch length, took one stitch, then I'm going to pivot, take one more stitch again, return my stitch length, and continue all the way to the other corner. And that's just preventing those angled stitches. And then I've backstitched. Trim your threads. I'm not concerned about those ones back there. Now we need to cut down the center line. So grab your seam ripper and start cutting down that center line that we drew. So you can see I've stitched the box and I've ripped a hole here in the center right there. So I've stitched all the way around that box. You can see it on this side. And I've cut a hole in the center so that I can keep cutting down the center. And when I get to the end, I cut on an angle into the corners. And as I mentioned when we were doing the facings, it kind of looks like little Y's, but they're V's in the corner. So it looks like a Y because when you pull that up, see how it looks like a Y? I just thought it looked like a Y. So that's how it looks when you've cut into the corners. You've got these little triangles out at each end. And then you've cut down the center. Now, same thing we did with the facings. I'm just going to press these with my fingers. And I just find that that helps when I get to turning it through. Now, we're going to take this to our iron and we're going to press this really flat. If you're using materials that you can't press, what you can do is use some double-sided tape to help hold these down so that they hold nice and flat for you, but you want to get this as flat as you can. So I'm going to take this to my iron, I'm going to press it really flat, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. So I've given that a really good press, and what I like to do is use a little bit of steam, or sorry, spritz it with water. You can use a little bit of steam, and that'll help really press it nice and flat for you. Now we need to take our zipper for our zipper pocket and add some double-sided tape to the top edges. Now remember, we're back where when we put this in, we need to pay attention to how we're installing this zipper because, again, for left or right, your zipper pull would be facing a specific way. And Kristen does have it mentioned in the pattern, so we don't have to figure it out. So she says, for lefties, place the zipper pull closing to the left. And for righties, place the zipper pull closing to the right. And Kristen's is all done for lefties because she's left-handed. And as I was mentioning, my son is ambidextrous. But if my daughter and I ever want to wear this, or myself or my husband say we want to borrow this bag, we're all right-handed, so it'll work for us. Now I'm just going to clip this piece up because I don't want it getting up under my foot. And I'm going to clip the top edge here too, where the zipper pocket is at the top. I've just clipped it up there so it doesn't fold under. Now I want this closing to the right. As I mentioned, I'm making this for a right-handed person. So I have it going towards the right, so the zipper pull is going to close towards the right. I'm going to center this in the zipper pocket opening. Oops. Or not, because it's stuck to my finger. And I just got to bring the pull through. So just like that. So again, I'm making this for somebody who's right-handed, so it's closing towards the right when it's looking at me. Now I'm going to stitch around this box here that we just pushed through and where the zipper is. So just around the box, under and over the zipper and on the sides. And I'm going to leave long thread tails for this part because you are going to see the stitching. I'm not using a dark material, so I don't want to see the stitching. And I'm just moving my zipper pull out of the way as I approach it. Again, sliding my zipper pull out of the way as I approach it. I don't want to stitch over my threads, so I'm just moving them out of the way. Almost pressed the wrong button. Now I'm going to pull these through to the back. It's going to be a little bit tricky to see because I've used a dark thread on a black zipper. I just realized my microphone was right against my mouth there, sorry. There we go. Now I have 4 threads in the back. I'm going to tie them off. I'm still getting used to having a microphone, so I'm not used to it being right there. And I also have to keep checking to make sure the little green light is on too. So if you ever see me pulling on my shirt or pulling at something on my shirt like this, it's because I'm checking to see that the little green light is still on. I don't want it to stop while I'm in the middle of filming a tutorial. So I've removed those clips. I've stitched all the way around that box. So now my zipper is attached. Now we need to flip this over and bring the short edge of the pocket up, lining it up with the top edge of the pocket. Sorry, we're not lining this up with the top edge of the pocket. We're lining it up with the top edge of the zipper tape. I was just reading that. Sorry about that. So you're lining up the pocket with the top edge of your zipper tape on the back. Sorry about that. I was just reading that because I saw that we were trimming away and I was trying to think of how we were going to trim that away. So again, lining that up with the top edge of the zipper. So push your lining out of the way. You don't want to sew through that. We're just sewing through where the zipper is. So I'm going to sew across that top edge where the zipper is right now. Just make it easier on myself. Just keep your lining pushed out of the way. And then sew down that side edge. And then I'm going to sew the other side edge. Now we need, what's going on there? Now we need to trim, that's what I was reading earlier as I was saying. We need to trim this top edge of the pocket here down so that it's out of the seam allowance. So trim it so that it is even with the top edge of the pocket that you just sewed. So you're trimming it even with the top of the zipper. And that's going to keep it out of the seam allowance here when we go to bind the bag together. And right now you have this fully functional pocket and it's not in your seam allowance at all. Now we need to take the completed back here and we need to place these so they are wrong sides together. Now your zipper pocket should be on the same edge as your bottom connector wing. This ensures that the pocket is accessible when you open the bag. So when you're wearing it, when you open the bag, you want to be able to access it with your correct hand. So the zipper pull always closes to the top. So I have my zipper pull or my zipper on the same side as my top connector. So here's my top connector, here's my bottom connector, here's my zipper. So the zipper, so bottom connector is here, top connector is here, and the zipper is closing up towards the top of the connector. If you are right-handed and you place it over here and it's at the bottom when it closes, that's wrong. It needs to be going towards the top of the connector, and it's the opposite for the left. So if you were left-handed, you'd have the top connector here, your bottom connector down here, and your zipper on this side closing to the top. So that zipper is going to be on the same side as the bottom connector. So just make sure it's on the same side as the bottom connector. Now I need to transfer my marks, my center markings. So I'm just going to do that quickly now because this is going to be important for when we stitch the bag together. And I'm just transferring them within the seam allowance. There we go. Now we need to clip these together all the way around. So I'm going to line up those marks that I've made because I have them on the front and the back of the panels. So lining up all my quarter marks just so that nothing shifts on me. And then I'm going to clip it all the way around. And we're going to sew these two panels together, and they are wrong sides together, not right sides together, wrong sides together. So if they are wrong sides together, you have it right. If they are right sides together, you need to flip them the other way. Again, we're binding this bag, so everything is going to be wrong sides together right now. So there we have it. Now I'm going to baste all the way around this panel to help hold it together. And when I'm basting, I'm going to be careful that I don't hit the zipper. So I'm actually going to start sewing where the zipper is so I can shift it out of the way. So I'm just going to move this zipper out of the way, and one of my clips just went into the garbage. Just moved that zipper back out of the way again, and the front zipper. Trim your threads. And there we have it. It is all attached. We have our zipper pocket inside and our zipper pocket outside. We have our back panel all complete. Now we need to move on to the lining front assembly. So grab out your card slot panel. It's going to be a long panel that's going to look like this. And I've got some threads here I'm just going to trim. Now on this panel there are some marks that you need to make for where you're folding your panel. So you have valley folds which go down and mountain folds which come up. So same thing as the way a mountain and a valley are, they go down and up. And I've already made those marks on my panel and I pressed it too. So I've made a mark here, 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 and here. I've also marked where the top of my panel is because that's very important to know where the top is because your first fold is a valley fold. So you fold it like that. So first fold is a valley fold. So that means these panels go right side, this panel goes right sides together. The next fold is a mountain fold, meaning the panels go flipped up and they go wrong sides together underneath here. Another valley fold, fold the fabrics right sides together. Another mountain fold, the fabrics go wrong sides together. Valley fold, right sides together. Mountain fold, wrong sides together. Valley fold, right sides together, and mountain fold. Now you're going to notice your last fold covers all those card slots. If you did all your markings correctly, it covers all your card slots, and that is correct. So one more time. Here's the top. I folded at the top one so that it's a mountain fold, so they go right sides together. Flip this over, and at this next line I drew, I'm going to fold it so it is wrong sides together. Excuse me for a minute. Excuse me. Now the next fold, I'm going to fold the fabrics right sides together on that fold or on that line. Then the next mark is going to bring my fabrics wrong sides together at that mark. Next line is here, so my fabrics are going to go right sides together. The next fold is wrong sides together. And then again at that mark, right sides together. And then the final fold will be wrong sides together. So you have valley, mountain, valley, mountain, valley, mountain, valley, mountain. And it'll look like that. And you have your final card slot. The final one covers all the card slots. So when you bring that one out of the way, you have all your card slots here. So 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to top stitch all those mountain folds. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 mountain folds, and we need to top stitch at the top edge of the mountain fold. So this is one of the mountain folds. I'm going to top stitch along that top edge. So when you use the markings given in the pattern, you'll be able to get them all folded that way. Just make sure you're folding mountain, valley, mountain, or valley, mountain, valley, mountain. Make sure you're following how the folds are labeled so that you fold them in the correct position. And like I said, that final fold will cover all the card slots. And that's how you know you've done it correctly, is if all those card slots at the end get covered with that final fold. And then we're top stitching all the mountains, and there's 4 of them. There's 4 mountain folds, and I've just top stitched all of them. Now that we have them folded like that, you're going to pull this bottom mountain fold out of the way, and so that you can see the rest of these folds. Now you need to take your ruler and measure into the center and draw a line from the top mountain fold to the bottom valley fold down here. So here's the top of the mountain one, and the bottom of the valley fold ends where this one folds up. So this bottom valley fold down here. So I'm going to go off camera because I need to measure and make that mark. And I'm also going to clip these in place along the sides so that nothing shifts on me. And then I'll come back and we will sew through all the layers, and then we will continue on. All right, so I have that line drawn, and I'm just going to show you how it looks with it clipped. So you can see the line drawn in the center to the bottom of that valley fold down here. Just going to try to get closer so you can see. So see the line there? Now we're going to stitch on both sides of that center mark using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So starting at the bottom of that valley fold, and I'm going to go up . Now I'm going to pivot up here. Oops, I'm going to pivot up here to come back down. So I'm going to take a stitch and pivot and go back down. This way here I didn't have to have all that extra back stitching at the top. It's going to be hidden down here. I don't know why that didn't just cut on me. So it looks like that. Now you can see I did the 2 lines. So your cards will fit nicely in there, and you can take a card and make sure that it'll fit. Now we need to fold this mountain fold, this one that we brought down, and we need to fold it back up. And it's going to cover, like I said, all those card slots. So fold it back up, add some clips, help hold everything in place. And then we're going to baste the sides of this panel together. And this front slot here, as Kristen mentions, is good for using bills or receipts or anything like that. It's a nice little extra security feature too. So you'll see it looks like that, and then when you pull this back you have a place for your bills and then a place for all your cards. So I'm just going to go trim up all my threads. You don't want peekaboo threads, and any of my threads too that have sort of frayed. Needs a haircut. All right. So there you have it. That's how it looks once it's all done. And again, you have your pocket for your bills or receipts. And then you have 1, 2, 3, so 6 card slots, 3 on each side. Now, Kristen does say this is a fun spot to put a fold over label if you have one. Just baste it below the mountain fold. I don't have any, so I'm not going to add that. Now we need to place our interior card slot ends, so these are Q, right sides together with the sides of your card slot panel so that the top edges meet. So the top edge is the edge where you reach into the pocket. So this is the top. And if you want, if you hadn't already, that's where the top is. I have a T marked there. So place it so these top edges meet. So line up your top edges and then your side edges. Clip it in place. And then on the other one too. Line up the top edges and then clip the side edges in place. And then we're going to sew the card slot panels to the sides of Q. Now you can trim this. I'm going to trim it now. I was going to wait till we sew it, but you can trim this down. Just going to do that now. I'm just following just like that. So I've just trimmed it down so you can see I've trimmed it down. Now turn it over so you can see your card slot folds, and you're going to sew the side edges all the way across the way I was just reading. So you're sewing with the folds, not against. Sorry, I was just reading what she wrote there and why she was doing that. So we're sewing with this facing up. So we're sewing with the folds, she says, not against the folds. And you want to sew them using the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm just changing my stitch length back. So see how we're sewing with the folds, not against them, so we're not pushing the folds. So sew both edges using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And it makes sense because often what happens is you end up pushing those folds when you're sewing them. Trim your threads. Now we're going to fold back these ends and we're going to top stitch the layers, and I'm just pressing this with my fingers. You can take this to your iron and press it with your iron. And I'm going to grab this because we'll need it next. And the other thing too is this is where you get to see after you top stitch if it's the same size as your panel. You'll know if it's the same size. So before you go and top stitch that, you may want to do what I just did, which is check it now, because if you're finding that it's going to be shorter, you can always unpick your seam allowance, one of the ends here or both ends, and then shift it. So you'll want to have the same amount on both sides. So if you need to change your seam allowance, now is the time before you top stitch, because you don't want to get it all top stitched and then find out it's too small. So you could unpick these now and re-sew them using a smaller seam allowance if you're finding this is going to be too short. So adjust your stitch length to your favorite top stitch length, and then we're going to top stitch this all the way across. All right, and then trim your threads. And then again, I can check and see, and mine's the same length. I have no problems with mine. It's all the same lengths. We're going to set that panel to the side, the one with the card slots. So we're setting it to the side for now. We're going to now move on to attaching our front pocket. Now, I'm not doing that front pocket. I'm doing the water bottle pocket. But if you're doing the front pocket, what you're going to do is it's going to look like the bottom panel that we sewed here when we did the pocket for the zipper. So we'll say this is it here. You're going to take this and you're going to place your exterior and your lining so they are right sides together. Then you're going to sew them together on the straight edge here using the seam allowance given in the pattern. You'll also do that for the front upper pocket, because this is the front lower. I know she starts with the lower, or the upper, but you'll do that with the front upper pocket too. Both of them go right sides together, and then you're going to sew across the straight edge. Once you do that, you'll turn them so they are going to be wrong sides together and press them together. Then you'll top stitch the straight edges using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Once you have those done, we'll say that this is my back panel. You're going to place the front panel right sides up on your work surface and clip the lower slip pocket, aligning the bottom curved edges to the panel. And then you'll baste it in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. You'll then take your upper panel and you'll line up your curved edges and you'll then baste that in place as well. Now, the upper and lower panel will overlap a bit, and that's what you want. You want them to overlap that slight bit. Now, I'm doing the water bottle pocket, so I need all my water bottle pocket pieces. So I'm going to grab them all now. And my son chose the water bottle pocket option. Now, we need to take your water bottle pocket trim end pieces and fold the short ends to the wrong sides by the measurement given in the pattern. So you're going to fold them to the wrong side using the measurement given in the pattern. So I'm going to go press them, and it's a mark from the short edge up, and you're going to press them. So I'm going to go to my iron and give these a good press. Then I'll come back and we will continue on with constructing this pocket. So I've pressed those short edges to the end, as mentioned in the pattern for the measurement. Another thing you need to do is mark a center line down the entire length of the piece N, trim piece, so that you have that center mark made, because we will need that later. Now we need to top stitch that folded edge. So we'll top stitch these folded edges. So just like that. They're both top stitched now. Now grab out your mesh panel here, and this is the mesh. Now when I cut it so the stretch goes widthwise, not height. You want it to go towards the width. So just make sure when you cut your mesh, you have the stretch going widthwise. We need to take these trim pieces and align them at the top straight edge. So pin them in place and align the top straight edges, and they will meet in the center. So if you pin it, they'll meet in the center. Pin it along the top straight edge and have them meet in the center. Now this one's a bit crooked. So the side edges meet and the top edges meet and the middle meets as well. And that's how it looks. It looks just like that. And they've met in the center. Now we're going to top stitch along, or stitch along this area, and I'm going to flip it so my mesh is up under my presser foot, and we're going to stitch this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I'm stitching with my mesh up so that it doesn't get caught on my feed dogs. we go. Now we need to fold the long edges into that center line that we made. So you're going to take the long edges and fold them in to meet that center mark that we made. So just like that. So what you'll do is you'll place double-sided tape on both sides of the line. So double-sided tape on both sides of the line. So there we go. I've got the double-sided tape on both sides of my line. Now I'm going to remove the paper. Oh, that one didn't stay stuck down. Remove the paper backing from one and fold up that long edge to meet that center line. And I'll repeat that on this side. Falling off my chair a little bit. So fold it up to meet that center line. And then we need to fold the top edge down, so the side where the mesh is, to meet that center line as well. So get everything all lined up. Bring it down to meet that line. So they both meet in the center, just like that. So they're both meeting in the center right now. And for some reason, I didn't put my tape all the way to the end, so I'm just going to open this up a bit and add some more tape because I didn't put them all the way to the end. I don't know why I didn't do that. I misjudged the measurement. And now my nail is sticking to everything, of course. Now I'm just making a mess. There we go. Problem solved. Now we need to install our cord lock onto our cording. So take your cord lock and install your cord onto it. And this is the style I'm using here. So this little one right here, I don't know if you can see it. That one. It's hard to see on camera. So I'm just installing the ends of my cord into my cord lock. Pull it as tight as it can go for now. Then what we're going to do is we're going to put the cord lock between the folds in the center, between the folded short ends, and clip it to the ends. So on the short ends, you're clipping it to the short ends in the center, just like that. Oh, not like that. So clip it to the short ends in the center. So it'll look like this right now. You'll have your cord lock and it's in the center. Now you want to bring this down, this top edge here of the trim, so the top folded edge down to meet the folded edge on the back side here. So what you're going to do first is stitch the end of that cording to the edge so that it's in the center. and I'll show you how that looks in a second. So see how my cording is stitched into the center, and it's in the center now. So now we need to bring this top folded edge here down and wrap it around the cording in the center. I'm going to cut that thread. So bring it down to meet the edge that you can see underneath the cording. And you can use some double-sided tape here if you prefer. But your cording is going to stick out. So you see how mine's sticking out the top edge? That's what you want. You want it to stick out the top edge. And you can use some double-sided tape here to help hold it in place. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply a little bit of double-sided tape to help hold it in place when I fold it over. Because it's going to shift on me otherwise. So remove the paper backing. For some reason my double-sided tape doesn't want to stick to this material, and I don't know why. So remove the paper backing, make sure your cording is centered. Stick it down, matching up the edge underneath. Again, line up the side edges, the short side edges on the front and the long edges. So you can see underneath where the long edges are, you can line those up too, so it'll look like this. So I've brought it down and folded it over, so it went over the cording. Now we're going to top stitch that using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And if you find your presser foot is too big and it doesn't fit there, switch to a zipper foot. And I'm just back stitching here where the center is, just for some extra security and hold. So I've back stitched for some extra security and hold there in that area in the center. I'm just trimming all my threads. And that's how it looks. So that when we pull this cording, it'll tighten, as you can see, the water bottle pocket. So see how it tightens it? And I know my little tab, I think I put that upside down, but I don't know if there's a right or wrong way for that. So that's how it'll look when you get it all attached. Now we need to attach this mesh to the exterior panel. So lay your exterior panel right sides up, align this curve. So you might want to find the center of your mesh pocket. So I'm just going to find the center. I'm going to place a pin or a clip at the center. That's my center. And I want to make sure that this is still facing out, because the way I sewed it, it's kind of pointing out on one side more than the other. So line up my center mark on my mesh, and now I'm going to clip it in place. And remember, this is bigger, so you want to line up the side edges of your water bottle pocket with the side edges of the panel. It is bigger, that's so that you have room for a water bottle, but line up all those edges just like that. So I'm shifting it so that the edges all line up. Again, it will be bigger in the center to be able to fit a water bottle. line up the curve, and then your center edges, or your side edges, sorry. There's a clip broken somewhere. Oops. So that's how it's clipped, and look how it sticks up off the top. I'm just going to show you. See how it sticks up? That's what you want, because you want to be able to fit a water bottle in there. And that's also why I said to have the stretch of the fabric going on a width rather than top to bottom, so that it has that little bit of extra stretch. Now we're going to baste this to the front panel. So baste it all around the front panel. Making sure everything stays lined up. I'll grab my water bottle and I'll show you how it looks with my water bottle. And then I just cinch this in and it would hold my water bottle nicely in place. Just like that. So now we have a fully functioning water bottle pocket. Now I'm going to pull this so that it is tighter and out of the way. Not too tight though, we don't want to cause the panel to curve, but just so that it's tight and out of the way. And I'm just going to tuck that down, and we just want that so that when we go to attach the rest of these, it won't be in our way. Now we need to flip this over because we need to baste the finished front panel to the finished card slot lining, so the card slots are facing in the same direction as the zipper pulls on your other panel. Now, because we didn't add a zipper to the front of this panel, we need to figure out how we're going to place this card slot panel so that it's facing in the right direction when your bag is in use. Now, as I mentioned, I'm making this for a right-handed person. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my exterior back panel, I'm going to lay it against me so that as if I'm wearing it and the bag is constructed. This is the right hand, and I know when this is together, it's going to be facing the panel, and I want to be able to reach in to the card slots when the bag is open. So this is the opening, and I want to be able to reach into the bag. I'm going to place my water bottle pocket so the water bottle is up where it opens, and then this will give me the idea of how the bag is going to be when it's all constructed. So this is the top, the water bottle, and that's also the top here. When we reach inside, because I'm right-handed, I know that it's going to be here. That's where the card slots are. So with the water bottle pocket, if you've made that, you need to place your card slots so the opening is on the right side. So they open from the right side. If you're left-handed, they're going to be opening from the left-hand side. So line up all your quarter marks. Get them all lined up. Now I'm going to remark those quarter marks because when we go to attach our gusset, I need to know where they are so I can add my gusset. And I can actually see the fold lines here from when I folded this to find the center marks before. And I'm just marking it within my seam allowance. There we go. All right. And that'll just help because when we go to attach the gusset, I'm going to need to know where the quarter markings are to be able to get my gusset on correctly. I can see a thread here that I need to trim, so I'm just trimming it. So I'm just pinning this all the way around, and then I'm going to baste these panels together. And these panels right now are wrong sides together. So you want them wrong sides touching. So now I'm going to baste all the way around this entire panel, and you can use a longer stitch length if you want. And again, I'm sewing with the mesh up so that it doesn't get caught on my feed dogs. And there we have it. We have our lining attached to our water bottle pocket exterior. Now we're going to sew our gusset. So for this, we need our gusset zipper, or our main zipper. We need our gussets. So grab your gusset. You have two bottom gussets, and then you have your zipper panels. Can you believe we're almost done this? It's really exciting. I'm excited to see how this looks finished. All right, so we're going to place some double-sided tape along the front and back edges of our zipper. I'm going to start with just the front edges, and then I'll add it after. So on both long edges of the zipper, add your double-sided tape. Remove the paper backing from one edge, and then we're going to place it so that it is right sides together with the right side of our exterior zipper panel or zipper gusset, and this is piece K. So line the top long edge with the top long edge of your zipper. So align them. Now I'm going to stitch this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And where that zipper is, I'm just going to zip it out of the way, and I'm going to readjust that area because where the zipper is, it kind of causes a little bit of a lump, and I want my zipper to stay nice and straight. Now we're going to attach our lining side. So I'm going to place the double-sided tape on this side again, on the back side. Now, if you don't want to use double-sided tape, you don't have to. You can just clip this all together. So place the lining right sides against the wrong side of the zipper. So your zipper is sandwiched in between. You have a zipper sandwich. So the right side of your lining will be against the wrong side of the zipper, but when you look at the line at all of this, your exterior and your lining are right sides together with the zipper in between. So stitch this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. I'm just going to clip this fabric out of the way because we're going to repeat that for the other side. So you're going to sew the other side to the zipper. So I'm just clipping these out of the way, just like that. And I already have this double-sided tape on my zipper, so I'm going to remove the paper backing and place it together right sides with my zipper, lining up those top long edges and the short side edges. sew this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And there's that zipper pull, so I'm just going to zip it out of the way and then fix the zipper so I don't have that lump there. Another bit of double-sided tape along the top long edge here. Oh, my cane just fell. Align the top raw edge and make sure your side edges are all lined up too. You want everything to be all lined up. So now I'm going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I'm approaching where the zipper is, so I'm going to zip it out of the way. And I'm going to fold this fabric out of the way. But before I do that, I'm going to transfer any center marks before we stitch, because we need center marks for lining up the gussets and everything. So I'm going to transfer center marks. Actually, I'll leave them for now because the center marks, we'll do that by folding our completed gusset after. So I'm just lining up these long edges on the zipper gussets because we're going to top stitch the zipper gussets. And if you used your exact seam allowance, your bottom gusset will be the exact same width as the top zipper panel here. If it's a little off and it's a little bigger, go ahead and trim it, but make sure you trim evenly from both sides so that your zipper stays centered. Now I'm going to top stitch this along both long edges. And I'm just making sure everything stays flat underneath as well. Zip my zipper out of the way so it doesn't dangle. Ooh, I almost zipped that right off the edge. Trim all your threads, just like that. Now, if your zipper pull isn't already attached, go ahead and attach that now. I'm going to reattach mine because it's too close to the edge here. So I'm going to reattach it. I'm going to go off camera and do that, and I'll be right back. All right, so I've got that zipper pull back attached. So now it's in the center of my panel where I like it to be. Now we need to stitch around all four edges. So we're going to baste around all four edges. And that's why it's important to make sure your zipper pull is in the center so you don't accidentally hit it, but also so that it is out of the way. I'm going to trim my threads just like that. Now we need to place our exterior bottom gusset right sides together with the zipper gusset, and you're going to align these short edges. And again, that's how you'll know if you sewed with an accurate seam allowance, is if these are the same width. So clip it together and then sew using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now we're going to attach the lining. So you're going to place the lining so it is lining right sides together with the lining side of the zipper gusset. So take your lining and place it so it is lining sides together just like that with the lining side of the gusset. And you're going to clip it in place and then sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And you want to sew across the short edges so its linings are right sides together. And sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And it'll look just like that. Flip it so that the gussets are now wrong sides together. And we're going to top stitch along the short ends here using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So that's top stitched. It'll look just like that. Now we need to repeat that for the other side because we're making this into a tube or a circle. So lining our zipper gusset, top zipper gusset exterior with the bottom gusset exterior right sides together, clip it in place, lining up those side edges, and then sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Then we have to take our lining now and place it right sides together with the right side of the lining. And make sure it's not twisted. It'll look like this. You don't want it twisted. Clip it in place. And then sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Trim any threads. Now we need to turn this right sides out. So just flip it around so that you have your exterior on top and your lining on the bottom. And we need to top stitch that seam here where the zipper is. So we're going to top stitch that seam just like we did before we attached this second side. Clip your threads. Now we need to line up the long edges, clip them all together, and then we are going to stitch the long edges or baste the long edges together so that it holds them together so we can sew our gusset to our panels. So I'm just adding some clips to help hold it in place. And then I'll baste the edges here together. Again, this is because we're binding this bag. I'm just going to make sure it's smooth. lining up the long raw edges, clipping it in place, and then we're going to stitch them to hold them together. And you can use a longer stitch length for this if you'd like, but we're basting these together. Clip any threads. Now we're going to mark some center marks here, and what I'm going to do is I take the zipper panels and I fold where those seams are so that they match, and I'm just going to mark within my seam allowance so I know where the top seam is and the bottom seam, and I can still see the fold from when I folded my gusset earlier to find the center mark. And then line up these marks. Just make sure you're marking within your seam allowance. All right, so I've got all my marks made. Now we need to grab our completed back panel here, and you need to clip our gusset to it. But these are going to be right sides together because we're binding the bag. Now you want to make sure that the zipper is on the right side when you're wearing it. So depending on which way you are making your bag, so if you're making it for a right-handed person, you want the zipper to open correctly. So when it's closed, it should be on the same edge as the bottom connector. So my bottom connector is here, and this is where it's closed, and that is correct because if I look, when my bag is completed, you can always do a test. It's always good to do a test. This is where the zipper is. It's on the right side when you're wearing it for a right-handed person. So the zipper will be on the same side. It will be closing on the same edge as the bottom connector. And if you're making this for a left-handed person, then your zipper will be on the same edge again for a left-handed person. So here's for a left-handed person, and this zipper is on this side. It's opening on this side. So make sure your zipper is on the correct side. So it's the same side as your connector wing. So when I reach in the bag, here's my right side, here's my other zipper on this side. Line up all your quarter markings. So we made some quarter markings, so line those up, pin them in place. Again, just double check. It's always good to do what I did, which was put it against me and see if it's going to be on the right side that you need to have it on, depending on which way you're making this. So if you're making this for a right-handed person, you want to make sure it opens on the right-hand side. My microphone is still on. We are good. So now I'm just clipping this right sides together, lining up my quarter marks all the way around. Going with the curve. And this should fit like a glove. Now, when you're sewing this, if you want to help it ease in the curves, you can add little snips in the curves to help it ease in. You won't need to though, I don't think. I'm feeling like this seems really good, like a really good fit, but if you just want to make sure that you have a really good fit and you don't have any issues, you can add those snips if you want. Make sure your snips are only within your seam allowance. But see, mine's fitting perfectly. There's no issues. I don't even think I'm going to make snips because it seems like it fits so perfect. I'm using lots of clips, however, to really hold everything in place. Oh my goodness, this fits perfectly, and it's a nice fit. I can't believe how perfect that's fitting. I love when gussets fit so perfectly. Oh, I just broke a clip. I think I'm going to need to get some more clips. I'm going to grab out my extension table just because it's going to really help me hold this so that it doesn't fall. And now I'm going to sew the gusset to the rear panel using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And just make sure your zipper here on the back is in the center so it's not dangling into your seam there when you're sewing. You can use a stiletto to help hold your fabrics. So just sew all the way around using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I'm just going to make sure that zipper pull, because I'm coming to it. So there's a zipper pull here, and I'm glad I double checked because I almost stitched over that. And I'm just going to move this zipper up again, out of the way. That's for that zipper pocket, because it's a dangly pull. Trim your threads. I'm just going to move this out of the way for now. So you want to turn right sides out just to make sure that everything was caught in the seams. Look at how beautiful that looks. Oh my goodness. And the nice thing about binding is it's going to add that bit of extra structure. It acts like a skeleton. So now we need to add our binding. And I'm using pre-made binding. Now you can use your favorite method for binding. I'm going to show you how I do it. So I have this pre-made binding here. And I think this one might be a little bit too big for the seam. I'm just going to grab my other binding. This one is too wide for this seam. So I'm just going to go off, grab my other binding, and then I'll be right back. I have two different ones, and this one's the slightly wider one, and I want the one that's a little bit thinner. I grabbed the wrong one. Hopefully I have enough of that other one. So I'm just going to go grab my other binding, and I will be right back. All right, so I have my thinner binding that I want to use, and hopefully there's enough here. There should be, because I think it's brand new. Now, here's how I do my binding, and you may do your binding a little bit differently, but what I like to do is add some double-sided tape, and I do that on the side that's flat, so not on the gusset side. I do it on the main panel or whatever the panel is called. So this one is called our back panel here. So I just place double-sided tape all around the edge. And what this is going to do is it's going to hold my binding underneath in place while I attach it to the top front. And I just find that this just really helps me get a nicer binding. It's just easier for me. All right, so make sure the double-sided tape is attached. Remove the paper backing. And I'm just going to tuck my zipper pull down into, just like that, just so it's out of the way. I kind of tucked it into itself. And I'm going to start adding my binding. So the center of my binding, I line that up with the seam. So the seam goes right into the center there of the binding. And I just start placing it all the way around, attaching it to that double-sided tape, so making sure it sticks to the double-sided tape all the way around. Continue all the way around the entire bag, pushing it against the double-sided tape as I go. And if you have to, you can readjust it as you're attaching it, like I'm doing here. Just go all the way around. And again, if you have a method that you prefer to use, you can use it. I know some people like using fold-over elastic for their binding, and I've tried using fold-over elastic, but we're just not really friends, fold-over elastic and I. For some reason, I just can't get it to go. It just doesn't like me. It just doesn't want to cooperate and play nice, so I just don't use it. And maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just user error, but it doesn't like me. So now I have these two ends here. I take the one end that I was just bringing around and I fold it so it's under, so there's no raw edge to be seen, and I just give it a press with my fingers, with my nails, and then I wrap it around the other one, so making sure they stay tight. I'm going to bring this and I'm going to wrap it around the other one to hide all the raw edges. So line this up, tuck this in to hide all the raw edges. So it's just getting tucked into this one here, and it just tucks in. So you can see it's all tucked in there. I have no raw edges, and this sort of shifted on me, so I'm just going to do this. And then I add a clip to hold it in place, and then I'll come back on this side and I'll bring this side around the edge and add clips, bringing it all the way around the other side. And the clips help hold that side, this side here, this top edge, which is where I'll be looking at when I'm sewing, and I'll use a stiletto too if I need to help hold it in place as I'm sewing around. And as I was mentioning earlier, Kristen really thought of everything, and she has all the bulk removed. So there's not a lot of bulk. And this type of binding that I'm using, while it's folded, you could use, like I was mentioning, elastic. You could use some non-fraying material, so maybe a canvas. You could even use some ribbon, so gross grain ribbon could be used for your binding. Anything that you want. And using those kind of things, so a canvas or even the gross grain ribbon, that'll help reduce bulk as well, because you won't have all this extra material that's all folded over. So now we need to sew this in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And again, I'm going to attach my extension table to this. And I'm going to start sewing where I connected those two pieces, if I can see it. Yeah, it's right here. That's where I'm going to start sewing. And I'm really going to back stitch there just to make sure I get it all. Now, make sure your zipper pulls are not in the way. That's what I was just checking. And I don't think I need to use a stiletto, surprisingly enough. If you don't have a stiletto, you could use your awl, you could use even pointed end of your short scissors, your small scissors. Just be careful that you don't hit anything that you're using with your needle. You don't want to break a needle. So there's that zipper pull, and it's not in the way because I tucked that zipper pull into the pocket. Now, if you're finding that there is some bulk and your machine is struggling a little bit, what you could do is try a bigger needle, and also sometimes hammering the materials to flatten them will help make it so that it compresses them and squishes them all together, making it easier to sew. Trim your threads. And this is where you can go back and check. And this is why I like to use a matching thread, so that if I have to go back because I missed anywhere and stitch, I can, and it won't show. But I think that's probably the best binding I've done. Turn it right sides out and give it a little look. And again, I'm going to be wearing it so that it is right-handed. Oh my gosh, I love how that looks. That's so perfect. I'm going to be wearing it so it is right-handed. Oh, I got to go back over here. Right-handed, so it is on the right side. Now we need to repeat that whole process to attach the second side. So I'm not going to do that on camera because you just watched me do that all. There's no need for you to see me do the second side. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to attach the second side. I'll add my binding, and then I'll come back and we'll turn it right sides out together. So I'm going to go off camera. I'll do that. And then when I come back, we'll finish turning it right sides out and making our strap. So all that binding is now attached, and the second side is also attached. Now we're going to turn it right sides out. And I'm just going to open that zipper pocket there too to get the zipper pull out. Just give everything a nice press to get it all out. And remember how we kept the zipper here out of the seam allowance? It's just right there on the edge. Well, not really. It's kind of on the edge, which is nice. It's just almost out of the seam allowance, or almost in the seam allowance, but looks like it's in it. I will add some clips later to this to really help give it its shape. Look at how awesome that looks. What an awesome bag. And my son will wear it because he's right-handed, so he'll wear it like this. Or he's right and left-handed, but anybody who's right-handed can wear it. Reach in. You've got your zipper pocket. You've got your card slots in there. Excellent. Now what's left to do is attach our strap. So let's do that. Let's get our strap done. So as I mentioned, I'm using material to make my strap. So here's one half of the strap. This is the top strap and this is the bottom. I've already sewn the bottom while I was off doing my bag here when I was sewing the binding and the last side. I decided I would sew this because you don't need to see me do both straps on camera. So if you're using material, what you'll do is draw a line down the center of both of the pieces. So draw a line down the center, then add a strip of double-sided tape either on both sides or right down that center line. Now, if you're using quilting cotton for this, you can take this to your iron and press it in half with your iron. Then you'll do the same steps that we're supposed to do, that we're doing here, because when you press it in half, you'll end up with that seam, that crease in the center. Now you'll take your long edges, press them into the center. Now I'm not putting it right in the center, I'm just putting it a smidge away from the center mark. And that'll help reduce the bulk when we fold this in half again. So it won't be all bulky in the center there. Flip it around, press the other edge into the center, leaving that little bit of a gap. Not a very big one, just enough. Now with this like this, we need to fold it in half again. So I'm going to take double-sided tape again and I'm going to place it down one side. Now there is an option to add foam to the center of this for some extra padding on this top strap. I'm not going to add the foam. I'm just going to leave it because I'm using this faux leather for the strap, so it is nice and cushiony already. So now I'm just folding it in half again, making those folded edges meet, and the double-sided tape is helping hold it in place for me as I'm pressing it down. I'm still going to add a couple of clips just to really help ensure that it stays together. And then I'll top stitch down the edges. Now we need to also deal with one side. One side needs to be finished. And I just lost that. One side needs to have a finished edge and one side can be left raw. Now we need to do that. So open this back up and there's a mark you need to make from the short edge down. And even though I have double-sided tape, you can see I could still pull it apart. So from one short edge down, you'll make a mark. There's a measurement in the pattern from how far down you're going to put this, and you're going to fold it under at that mark. Once you have the short edge folded under, you'll then refold everything. Now I sew my strap a little bit differently, so I'm going to go and do that now. And I know there's double-sided tape on everything. That's okay. And I'll put the link below in the description for how I sew my straps so that you can also sew your strap the same way if you prefer. Oops. I have my other microphone charging and I didn't want to hit it. So now I'm just going to turn this. I'm going to press this one edge back under. So you're folding it back into the center. First, I just want to snip these corners. Just get it all nice and flat. Press it again. There we go. Once your strap is how you want it, and it looks good, we're then going to top stitch this. For some reason it's not sticking to the double-sided tape on the other side. There we go. Then we're going to top stitch both long edges using the seam allowance given in the pattern, so that's how it looks. And we want to top stitch both long edges. So top stitch both long edges. Now to prevent shifting, start at one edge, go all the way down to the other edge. So this shifting and twisting, I mean. So you start at one edge, sew all the way down, break your stitches, come back up to the same edge you started at, back stitch, and then sew down the other edge. And you're basically sewing in the same directions. Well, you're not basically, you are. You're sewing in the same directions on both sides of the strap. And I think I ran out of bobbin. I did. I need to go fill my bobbin. So I will do that and I'll be right back. All right, so the thread has been changed and I finished stitching where my stitching went off, and I did have to back stitch, but because it's such a dark material and the thread is also dark, you don't see it. Now we need to grab your strap converters here, and these are piece L, and we need to insert the raw edge of your thicker strap into the strap converter here, and you're going to use a measurement given in the pattern for how far in it's going to be placed. You can use some double-sided tape to help hold this in place. So I'm going to place some double-sided tape all the way down the center of this piece. Because we're also going to add the other strap in here as well. I'll do that on this piece, because we're going to put this over top after, and then we'll top stitch these together. So I'm just going to place that to the side. Now you need to take this raw edge, so the edges that's not finished on this wider piece, and place it into the strap converter just like that. Then you're going to take the thinner strap and you're going to place it centered as well into the strap converter, lining up those two raw edges just like that. Make sure it's centered. Then take the other strap converter and lay it over top. Line everything up. So everything's all nicely lined up. Now we're going to stitch around this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So stitch all the way around. And just follow the curve of the converter. And at these curves here, I'm just going to pivot around them. And I'm going to sew with the smaller seam allowance now. And this might feel a bit wonky because you're really stitching really close to the edge there, but you can do it. I have faith in you. Now, if it feels like it's a bit hard to sew because it's such a small area that you're putting your presser foot on and there's that material in the middle for your strap, if it feels a bit too wonky for you, what you can do is use your zipper foot, and that'll help you get nice and close to the strap without falling off the edge. I just do like it with the thicker presser foot because I feel like it holds better. Now, another thing you could do here is use some edge coat and edge coat your edges, or you could have done that before we attached these. But that's how it looks once it's all stitched. You can also add some rivets if you'd like to the center here, which I might add a rivet here and I might add a rivet here just to help hold these. So I might add 2 here and 1 here and evenly space them apart just for some extra bling, but to also, you know, add some extra security in that strap connector area. Now, what we're going to do is add our swivel hook, or our slider and swivel hook. So thread your loose end of your strap through your slider and then over the center bar, just like that. And this is the smaller piece, just like that. So the slider is facing up, swivel hook against the table. I'm going to bring it so it comes around this way. So an easier way to do this might be to go like this. Have your slider so it is against the table, swivel hook against the table, feed this through, why can't I do this? Feed this through the hardware, and then your slider and your swivel hook are on the same side right now. Now, we need to bring this loose end back to go up through the center bar. So give yourself some slack here in the swivel hook, in the slider. And if you have a bar that can move, a center bar, move it so it's against one side of the strap, and then slide the strap up through, so it's going to look like this right now, and then move the center bar back against the one you just pulled up through and bring it back down over the middle bar, so it'll look like this. You can see it there. See how you see it in the center? And then adjust so that it is the length given in the pattern for where it needs to be. And I'm going to add a rivet here as well. Right in there, I'm going to add a rivet. Now, you can sew this and add an X to the center if you don't want to add a rivet, but that's how it looks so far. But before I do that, we're going to go ahead and attach this to our top hardware here. And what you do is you feed this, so here's my hardware, here's my strap is the right way up. Feed this through the hardware and onto itself by the measurement given in the pattern. Clip it together and you can either, oh, I just broke a clip. You can either sew this or add a rivet. You can add 2 rivets because it's a thicker strap so that it holds it together. So I'm going to go add rivets and then I'll come back and our bag will be done and we'll look at how it looks when it's done. So there it is. I've added my rivets to my straps. So you can see the rivets there. I also decided to add rivets to this and I've added a rivet here. We just need to clip it to our bag. You can adjust it by the adjuster here. You have a fully functioning water bottle pocket, or maybe you made the slip pocket. The choice was yours on which one you wanted to make. And depending on how you wear it, so it will be worn on the right so that a right-handed person here can wear this. So I can reach in, I can see all my card slots. The pocket here, the zipper pocket is easy to get at. Everything is perfect for a right-handed person. So there it is. Your Buddy Sling Bag is all complete. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and maybe picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. Before you take your bag out to show it off to the world, don't forget to take lots of photos and post them on social media, including in the Facebook group. Also use the hashtags that are given in the pattern so we can easily find all your Buddy Sling Bags that you've made. Again, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you for sewing with me. Hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye and happy sewing.